Now, Trump lands in China. The expectation from half the political world was that the coverage was going to be cold, awkward, tense, hostile. They wanted that image. They needed that image. Instead, this man stepped off the Air Force One looking like a final boss, right? Red carpet, coordinated crowd, military ceremony, Xi Jinping, talking about making America great again, all at the banquet. And then Trump shared this.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Now, let's notice what made people angry here. Not policy first, not trade first, not tariffs first, image. That's what's around people's circus right now, because modern politics is emotional branding disguised as, analysis. People pretend visuals don't matter while spending their entire lives reacting to visuals, right? You think countries don't understand symbolism? China understands symbolism better than Hollywood does. Every camera angle, every flag placement, every staircase, every handshake, all of that is intentional. That welcome wasn't random. That was a message. And the reason you got some people spiraling online is because the image they've been sold for years was Trump embarrasses America globally. Do I got egg on? Oh, wow. Y'all weren't going to tell me I had food on my lip? Okay, wow. But yeah, it's still on there. I'm embarrassing America globally right now. Anywho, yeah, but the footage comes out looking like, a scene from a presidential victory montage, right? That creates ideological whiplash. But then people started pulling receipts from the Obama trip. And that's where this whole thing turned from a nice visit into internet gasoline.
Compare that once again to how they treated President Donald Trump earlier today. And this has been now compared all morning long to video of the last time Barack Obama went to China in 2016. TikTok may be gone, but those TikTok videos will still be somewhere. Anyway, but what happened is Barack Obama, it was a totally different scenario, and not in a good way. Look at this. This is Barack Obama landing in China, and it's the same plane. Air Force One lands in Beijing or whatever, and it pulls up, and there's a much smaller crowd. There's no children with their flags chanting Trump is bueno or Obama is bueno or whatever. There's no military. He has to come off the back, the short stairs. They don't even let him come off the tall stairs because they don't have him. He had to come out the back entrance. There's no red carpet. There's like 5 Chinese people there. One of them this lady gives him some flowers. And then the old Chinese men are like, all right, come here. We're going to walk to the car. No band, no military, no red carpet, no chants, no pomp and circumstance. Nothing at all, just some handshakes coming down the small stairs, getting in the car, and rolling away. That's how they treated Barack Obama. Compare that once again to how they treated President Donald Trump earlier today. I mean, you can just hear the difference. You can't even hear the plane engines in this one because the crowd is so loud. In the Barack Obama clip, all you could hear was the plane engines because there's no crowd.
Now, to be fair, every international visit has different logistics, different security setups, different diplomatic tensions. Cool. But politically, that context dies immediately once the footage exists. Because politics in the internet era is no longer what technically happened. It's what did the public feel happened. Obama clip feels stiff. Trump clip feels triumphant. Fin. I said it right the first time. Y'all know how I am. But as I battle my words, I'm going to say that's the real battle. And the media still doesn't understand this. They keep trying to fact check emotion with bullet points. It's like bringing a calculator to a house fire. You know what I'm saying? And what really irritates the left here is the contrast in energy. Obama was always presented like the global celebrity president. Smooth, elegant, internationally adored. So watching Trump, the guy they framed as uncivilized, as the uncivilized disruptor, if you will, when he receives this level of ceremony from China, it completely scrambles the script. Especially after years of hearing he's dangerous, threat to democracy, he's isolated. Nobody respects him. Meanwhile, the footage looks like China wrote out the NBA Finals intro package for my guy. And then Fox started stacking the comparisons together. Obama, Biden, right next to Trump, getting treated like a returning emperor.
And every detail choreographed that shows they care. And look at who greeted the president, the second most powerful man in China, the vice president, Han Zheng. It's kind of big. The United States coming to town clearly has an impact. So China wanted to make the effort, and they did. Now, compare that to what we saw under the last two administrations. Not good. President Biden's defense secretary, for example, Lloyd Austin, could not get his counterpart on the phone from Beijing for a year and a half. And Secretary of State Blinken, remember, he was in Alaska. He got publicly dressed down by Chinese officials in his first year in office. And then there was President Obama's last year in office, his arrival to the G20 summit. Look at this.
As he stepped off Air Force One, the red carpeted stairs were missing, forcing President Obama to use an alternate exit typically reserved for war zones. On the tarmac, a Chinese minder tried to block U.S. press access, screaming at a White House aide, "This is our country, this is our airport." Then he yelled at National Security Advisor Susan Rice and tried to prevent her from entering the president's motorcade. The Secret Service had to intervene.
Little different greeting now, right? It was pretty clear. Beijing did not take them seriously. I don't care who you voted for. That's just a fact. With President Trump, they're sending a different signal. But don't be fooled by the pomp, by the circumstance. We cannot forget who we're dealing with. A regime responsible for a plethora of human rights abuses. They unleashed COVID on the world and never owned up to it. They steal intellectual property as we speak.
Now, this clip matters because it's not just comparing presidents, it's comparing posture. Whether people admit it or not, countries respond to perceived leverage. That's real life. If a nation believes your administration is desperate for approval, they negotiate one way. If they think you might punch the table over, they negotiate another way. Now, that doesn't mean every loud leader is effective, but it does mean weakness gets studied internationally faster than Americans realize. And honestly, part of the frustration from the left is self-inflicted. For years, they marketed America itself like it was the villain of every global story. Colonizer this, oppressor that, apologize for that, bow to this. Then they're confused when somebody comes in with, no, America's interest comes first. And that's the part the country, they respond to that instantly. Not because people hate other nations, but because most people are exhausted by leaders who sound embarrassed to represent their own country. But then something happened at that banquet that really sent social media into cardiac arrest. Into cardiac arrest, right? Xi Jinping himself decided to say the phrase nobody expected to hear out loud.
Also, the 250th anniversary of American independence. The over 300 million American people are reinvigorating the spirit of patriotism, innovation, and enterprise, and ushering in a new journey for the development of the United States. The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
55年前，尼克松总统派基辛格博士访华。
Also,
Now, that right there is why the story exploded. Because politically, that sentence is radioactive. I'm saying make America great again is basically the geopolitical version of hearing Darth Vader quote a country song. The internet, couldn't process it. And it took, well, I want you to look how clever, Chi was there too. That wasn't just flattery. I think that was strategic language. I think that was strategic language right there. you know, he connected Chinese nationalism with American nationalism in the same sentence. That's important because Elise spent the last decade pretending patriotism itself was suspicious unless approved by the correct political tribe. Meanwhile, most normal people still love their country. They just don't spend all day writing dissertations about it on social media. You know, she understood Xi Jinping understood something I think American media forgot. People everywhere want dignity tied to identity. Chinese people, American people, everybody. And while everybody's online arguing about over this red carpet, the actual economic conversation quietly got bigger.
We just got a readout from the White House on this big bilateral meeting between the two presidents. So I'll read a couple of notes that I've taken away from this statement. They talked about expanding market access for American businesses into China. Remember, the president brought this delegation of 16 CEOs from different business and tech backgrounds. They also talked about wanting more progress on stopping the flow of fentanyl. That's something the president brought up. Now, the Chinese purchases of American agricultural products was also something that was brought up in these discussions. And President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. That's a really big takeaway. So we're going to focus on that as well. Also, both countries agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And after reading through this readout, there was really nothing in there that said that China was going to help pressure Iran in any way to ending the conflict. We were wondering if that was going to come up. It has been an incredibly busy day for the president, touring around all over Beijing. The president began his day with a visit to the Great Hall of People at the heart of the city, where he was greeted by President Xi. The delegation heard the national anthem along with a 21-gun salute, and the two leaders then had a bilateral meeting, and the president commented on his relationship with Xi. Watch.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together.
So once the bilateral was over, we actually got several statements from the Chinese side almost immediately. This is a not so thinly veiled warning from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman on Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, which, by the way, gets a ton of its defense weapons from the U.S. This is what she wrote. President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Now, here's the moment a reporter shouts a question at the two leaders about Taiwan, and watch what happens next.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah, neither wanted to say anything about it. Meanwhile, Iran looming in the background as a report overnight indicates that Iran may have taken a vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. While President Trump says he does not need Xi's help in ending the conflict, administration officials did go into this bilat saying that they were hoping to see China play a role, considering that it buys the largest amount of Iranian crude.
We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling. The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through but others not, it's easier said than done. It's a huge source of instability. It threatens to destabilize Asia more than any other part of the world. It's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role.
And remember, there were a huge contingency of CEOs that were present at the ceremony today. We saw them leaving the bilateral early, meaning that the president did what he said. He was going to make his first ask to Xi to open up China to these companies. Of course, the guys, they want to do business in China as long as it's safe to do business in China. The state banquet is up next, and then the first interview with Sean Hannity airs later tonight. We will find out much more directly from the president on what he got out of President Xi today.
Now, this is where the conversation shifts from symbolism to leverage. Oil, energy, shipping lanes, Iran, trade access. That's real power politics. See, one thing Trump understands better than most politicians is that economics is foreign policy now. Energy controls pressure. Trade controls pressure. Supply chains control, you guessed it, pressure. And the Strait of Hormuz, that conversation is huge because the entire modern world runs on stable movement of energy. The second that route becomes unstable, every country immediately starts sweating. So when China starts talking about buying more American oil while distancing itself from instability in the Middle East, that's not just business. I think that's strategic positioning. And watch how fast some media outlets suddenly become allergic to good economic news the second Trump's name is attached to it. If gas prices dropped under literally anybody else, we get orchestra music and crying anchors talking about historic relief for families. But this last clip is where, supporters are looking at this whole summit and saying, okay, now this kind of feels like momentum.
Success, right, Ainsley? Well, that's what you're hearing from Sean?
Yeah, so I talked to Sean this morning because it's easy. They're 12 hours ahead. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning here. It's 6 p.m. there. So they're getting ready for the state dinner. You see Dina Powell there on the left. You see Marco Rubio. We saw Scott Bassett. So I talked to Sean this morning, and he just finished interviewing President Trump, and that's going to air fully on his show tonight. But I said, what were the takeaways? And he said that President Xi will help with Iran. He said, quote, whatever Trump needs, committed to buy U.S. soybeans, more oil, LNG, which is the liquefied natural gas, and other energy. He agreed to buy 200 jets of the 737 MAX jets from Boeing. He said 200. Originally, it was 500. He surprised Xi, and he invited the president of China to go and meet with all of our U.S. CEOs, Lauren.
Success, right?
Boeing jets, soybeans, LNGs, I'm learning, oil purchases. Now, whether every single detail fully materializes or not, the broader point is this, and I think it's pretty obvious. Trump's entire political identity has always been built around, one thing, making negotiations look aggressive, public, visible and transactional. He doesn't do quiet diplomacy well because I don't think he's trying to look like a professor. He's trying to look like somebody who's moving pieces on a board in real time. And honestly, I think that style drives his opponents insane more than, the actual policy sometimes. Because traditional politicians usually speak in polished fog. Trump speaks like a man who's trying to close the deal before the elevator door shuts. That's the difference. And, at the end of the day, the entire China story exposed something deeper than politics, right? Excuse me. Americans are starving for visible strength again, not speeches about strength, not hashtags about strength, not careful, tested, consulted language pretending to be strength, visible strength. And that's why I think these clips are spread so fast. Not because everybody suddenly became experts on China protocol, but because people instinctively react when the leader looks like he walked into the room carrying gravity with him. And whether you love or hate Trump, one thing keeps happening over and over. The people predicting humiliation on him keeps ending up stuck explaining footage that looks victorious. That's the gap right there. So, if you made it to the end of this video, I'm going to give y'all another random word. Put the word staircase in the comment section. Yeah. If you made it to, no, let me stop. Y'all be safe. Go check out somebody today. You quite literally be saving their life. Peace.